So my talk title this morning is Staying Positive. While I was recuperating from bronchitis, I found a BBC 28-episode production of War and Peace. It was just as fascinating as it sounds. Now, if you don't know War and Peace, I admit I haven't read it, but it's considered by many to be one of the greatest books ever written, or the greatest novels anyway. And it reminded me, going through it, and it really was an interesting production, of two other books. The first one was the book of Ecclesiastes in the Old Testament. If you want to read a book of the Bible, read Ecclesiastes. It's very interesting. There are some speculations, or the old thought was it was written by Solomon. We certainly think it probably was written by somebody in his court, because it was written by someone extremely wealthy, had access to all the money, the wealth, the power, the fame, lust that he could possibly want. And none of it made him happy. None of it gave him any meaning at all. And so he's on this quest. What is going to make me happy? The other book that I found kind of very similar to it is, strangely enough, Gone with the Wind. Because it's a window into an aristocracy that is on the edge of an abyss, and they have no clue as to what's coming. Now, I did admit that I've never got through all of War and Peace before. It's quite daunting. It's very, very long. You need a Russian winter to get through it, is my idea. And first of all, they have these Russian names that go on for half a paragraph. It will be Prince Pierre, Gorbachev, Brezhnev, Stroganov, goes on for 8 more titles. And then in the next chapter, when you see this character again, they use his Russian pet name, Pookie. How are you to keep up with it all? Now, it doesn't have a main character. It has several main characters. You follow this whole set of people through this journey. It's about 175 years old and is just as modern. When you read it, you will recognize people. One of the main characters, Pierre, he is a bookish fellow, far too serious for the aristocracy. They're talking clever, funny things. He's too serious. He's awkward. He doesn't fit in. He's an illegitimate son. So the aristocracy has treated him just one step above the servants. They've barely tolerated him. Surprisingly, his father, who's never had anything to do with him, dies and leaves him this huge amount of wealth. Many, many palaces, thousands of serfs, which were basically slaves, untold wealth. Well, now all of society beats a path to his door, and particularly the pretty young ladies. He marries one, and she steals his heart. But he's soon bereft when he realizes that she's just after his money and other good-looking men, and he doesn't happen to be one of them. She's not a mean person, but that's just what her society is valuing at that time. That's how you play the game. So her betrayal knocks him on his rear. Sometimes getting knocked on your rear is not the worst thing that happen. You get a whole different viewpoint on your rear than you do standing on your feet. And sometimes you need that viewpoint. So he flees St. Petersburg, he flees society, and on his way, he happens to meet a person who's been a Freemason. And this man sees him, and he knows that he's in lots of trouble, and he encourages him to start a spiritual journey. And he does, and for the rest of the novel, he's on this spiritual path. Now, like Sherman coming to Atlanta, the whole novel is based on the idea that Napoleon is approaching Moscow. And when the fight really is hopeless, Pierre, like Red Butler, goes to fight the French. When the fight is over with, he shows up. He fights in the war. His best friend, a really great guy, gets killed. Pierre is captured by the French. He narrowly escapes execution. He's forced on a march back to France. while he's on this forced march, he befriends a peasant because now they're in the same circumstance. He befriends a peasant, and the peasant tells him, says, look here, you've got to learn to enjoy the simple joys of life. And even though this guy is prisoner and is on this forced march back to France, he's enjoying just the sunrise, the sunset. He's adopted this little dog that he feeds along the way, the simple pleasures of life. And we have all those around us all the time. We just have to recognize and give appreciation for them. You know, we have a new little puppy now for 2 years, and for some reason, she has decided that when I do my meditation, that she will come out and lay her head on my foot and take a nap. It thrills my heart. It thrills my heart. These simple pleasures can keep us going, And when we give gratitude for them, when we acknowledge them, when we look for them, we see more. Now, ultimately, Pierre escapes and he goes back home, and he's able to create a life for himself, embracing what he's learned from the peasant and from the Freemasons. And the main lessons from the Freemasons are finding purpose and meaning, connecting with others, making a positive change. You're here to do something wonderful. You're here to lift up, to inspire, to encourage, and to stay on a spiritual path. Now, I was surprised. I didn't really realize the Freemasons were in Russia. I thought they mainly were East European and in the Americas. Come to find out, the Freemasons have been around for a long, long time, going back to the 14th century. And they actually have their roots in another kind of interesting group called the Rosicrucians. If you want to study something inspiring and sad at the same time, look up the Guidestones of Georgia. The Rosicrucians were the ones that built it. It's an interesting story. Now, as I said, the Rosicrucians go way back. They go back to Hermeticism and ancient spiritual philosophy that was really a mixture of Greek and Egyptian thought. They were based on this guy, let me see if I can get his name right, Hermes Trismegistus. Trismegistus. You got to get a running start on that if you're going to get through it. Hermes Trismegistus. He was a Greek. He not really a god, but he took information from the Egyptians and he pulled it and gave it a Greek through a Greek filter. The information from the Egyptians, there are some people that say this stuff goes back all the way to Moses. Moses and the heretical Pharaoh who came out and said there's only one God. So all of this stuff is very, very interesting. Now, these principles really got a huge boost in America when they were written in a book, Kybalion, in 1908. 1908. What's interesting about that is that's 20 years, roughly, for when Dr. Ernest Holmes, the founder of our teaching, wrote his first textbook, and a lot of the principles that they write in this in the book Kabbalah is mentioned almost word for word in our textbook. So did Dr. Holmes use this as a resource? Was like ideas coming from, from consciousness into other like-minded people? We don't know. But it's interesting that they popped up around the same time. Now, one of the first principles is, and you know this, we talk about it all the time, the universe is mental. All is mind. The universe is mental. And so if the universe is a mental, it becomes imperative for us to keep a positive idea, to keep our thoughts and perceptions positive, and knowing that we can change our reality about how we're thinking. And you got to keep a guard, particularly right now. You have to keep a guard against all this fear we have bubbling up in our nation right now, in our culture. We're boiling in fear like a lobster in a pot, and we haven't even recognized it. It's coming at us from all angles, our news media, pharmaceuticals, politicians, religious outlets, all of this stuff. Last week, I broke a rule I have for myself, and I answered the telephone call from a relative. Normally, I let it go through to the message so I can hear the message, and then I can decide when and if I want to call them back. But I broke my own rule, and I picked up the telephone call. I knew I was in trouble when my cousin, the first thing out of her mouth was, "Ken, I've been doing research on global warming." I should have hung up then. She told me, she said, "I'm reading everything on the internet." Well, thank God from that, because normally what she does is flip through the National Enquirer while she's in the checkout line at Publix. So we can be grateful she's upped her game a little bit. But she goes on to tell me, one of the things she told me, she's, "Kim, everything's going on so bad." She says, "You just have to be stupid to move to Florida." Yeah. I was wondering about my intelligence the longer I stayed on the telephone call. Now, I can understand. We've got some major things going on, and even with the environment. You know, you hear about the heat domes that are happening in the north, and you hear about, people are concerned and worried about what is the future. Obviously, the planet is warming up things, but here's the thing. You can't give in to fear. Do not give in to fear. Fear is the midwife to your problem. You are birthing that problem into your life when you're in fear. "Lo, the thing I feared the most is now upon me." Fear, you're giving it energy. You're creating it. You're empowering it. Now, we can face challenges in life, but we don't want to give them any more energy. Harry Truman, one of the best presidents we ever had, he said, if you see 3 problems down the road coming at you, he said 2 are going to run into the ditch before they get anywhere near you. And we don't have a great record for predicting the future. When I was a young person, I worked for a congressman. I was his press secretary. And so I found out that you could have these experts come into the library, from the Library of Congress, and talk about any subject at all. I loved that. I would have these brilliant people come in and try to explain to us what was going on in the world. And I thought it was just amazing and wonderful, because they were very brilliant people. And to a person, they all said that by the year 2010, the world would be without oil. There would be no more oil left in the world. Well, here it is now, 2024, and America is one of the top producers of the oil. Experts often get the situation wrong. So we want to keep our focus on positive. And are there ways that we can make small changes? Small changes can make huge differences sometimes, especially small changes that are linked with a positive outlook. Look, I've heard one expert, there are many experts that are working on the global climate. This one young guy came out, and they're all kind of coming with trying to figure out different ways to get in the carbon from the atmosphere. One scientist, a young guy, came out and said, well, we could plant more trees. And not just a few trees, we can plant millions of trees. Think about all over our country, places that we could plant trees. The mangrove trees that we have growing in the brackish water, they are excellent. They will convert 90% more carbon to oxygen than a regular tree. It's something that we used to just think was almost a nuisance. Who wanted a mangrove tree? It may be an answer or one answer to a big problem. Now, it's probably not going to solve all the problem, but it could be a step in the right direction. We should also keep faith in our creativity to handle challenges, particularly when we link our work and creative energy with prayer. Prayer and work can produce amazing results. They used to say the city of Venice in Italy, they said it was going to be underwater. There was nothing they could do. Someone come up with an ingenious idea of you can create a dam with hydraulics using air. They've installed it, and they now say that Venice probably can last for another 50 years. Now, contrary to how much of the evidence looks at times, we're not a dumb species. We're probably smarter than we look at a distance. And we're not in need of a good, hard lesson. When we know better, we will do better. And there is that thing within us that wants to grow, that wants to thrive, that wants to live better. And when we link that energy with our prayers and our work, do what's right in front of us, don't allow this fear to overwhelm us, we can create miracles. Neville Goddard said, our imagination is linked to the creative power of the universe, your imagination. So right where we are, we can grow and thrive. We don't get into fear, but do the good that's right in front of us and have faith in creation. Have faith in our fellow human beings. It's within us to pull goodness and love from the very air itself. And you want to do it? Become a prayer machine. Pray. Pray when you wake up in the morning. Pray when you go to sleep. Pray when you're brushing your teeth. Pray when you're at the stoplight. Pray for yourself. Pray for your family. Pray for your friends. Pray for the world. Become a praying machine. It's the one thing that if you do, you will feel better about yourself. You'll feel better about your life. You'll feel empowered. You will know that there's a spirit and a power of goodness that's flowing through you. And then you can recognize more heaven on earth. You'll see it, you'll know, and you'll recognize it. You know, I go into where I do my grocery shopping, there's a karate school. And I love watching the parents and the kids at the karate school. And the other day I saw this 12-year-old little girl. 12-year-olds, that's pretty, that's getting close to the time where you don't want to have anything more to do with your parents till you need money from them when you're in college. But 12 years old, and she was holding her dad's hand all the way. She didn't need to hold it. He wasn't making her hold it. She was doing it because she has love for him, because he encouraged her to be there. He had encouraged her on. That's a show of love. That was heaven on earth. And the more we recognize our blessings, the more they expand, the more our ability to see them, and we can become channels of God's love made manifest. So right here, right now, where we are, there's something miraculous that's about to happen this week around us, and that is the blooming of the crepe myrtles. And I want you, when you go out and when you see those beautiful crepe myrtles blooming, I want you to say to yourself, that is evidence of God's creative energy. And I proclaim that here now for myself, and I am proclaiming that energy at work in my life. I'm seeing doors open for me, wonderful and amazing things happening for me. I am here to witness God rain down blessings upon me. I am here to use what's right in front of me to proclaim a better day for the world, a better day for this earth, to be reborn, re-blessed, recreated, so that people can live together in harmony, so that the weapons of war can be dropped, so children can be respected, women can be respected, and men honored, and grow up and thrive to have wonderful, healthy families. We are here to witness God made manifest through our love, our joy, our health, and prosperity. And you're up to it. It's yours to do, and now's the time. This is the truth in your life this morning. It's the truth in mine, and so it is.